And we're back. It is I, Brian, one third of the tremendous trio that is the I Hate the Scene podcast. And I am here, perhaps from the dead, to bring along a little message. This is our official final episode, installment, what have you, of the I Hate the Scene podcast. And it is a video interview that I conducted with Matt for my podcast, the Common Chaos Podcast, which you can follow down there at the bottom on the ticker right there. I wanted to be able to give Matt a platform and a just a chance to speak his mind on a podcast that wasn't related to I Hate the Scene, in the sense that it was along those lines and contexts and all of that. And yeah, it went well. I was really impressed with it. I went down to Matt's house and we were in his studio and we did the interview, and I wanted to capture it on video and put it up as a final, I don't know, to everybody that caused a ruckus and caused a scene, and for you to all just soak in the podcast for what it was, what I Hate the Scene was. And it was a blast. I had a great time. The last 2 years was really, really fun. And I appreciate everybody that came in live. We appreciate everybody that came in live, tuned in, followed us, engaged with us. You all know me and engagement, how important that is. And Matt loved it. And we really loved it. And unfortunately, you can't handle the truth. A lot of people cannot handle the truth. And that goes for, hey, maybe even us sometimes, And the truth is, this podcast became way more than we anticipated. And it just, is what it is. So this is your opportunity, of course. I don't know where my background went. To just listen to us one final time, hear Matt out, hear Matt's story, hear what he has to say, and hear what I Hate the Scene radio ultimately was. And hear him speak. I have to say thank you to Matt, too. He'll see this. He doesn't know that I'm doing this, but thank you, man, for the time and the effort that you put forth in this project, and the time and effort that you put into making this a reality over a decade ago. Just the idea that you even wanted to do this and really just said, fuck it, did it your way, and paved the way for me and my opportunities and a lot of the things that I've been able to do throughout my career. And all off of you just wanting to do it your way, man. You've always wanted to do it your way, and I continue to support you doing it your way. So I hope people enjoy this interview. It's going to be a weird one. So we had some, it wouldn't be the I Hate the Scene podcast without some weird shit, right? So first off, we jump in 16 minutes into the interview. For those of you that are watching this, you're likely an I Hate the Scene podcast enthusiast, whether you hate us or love us. And so you already kind of know the story. The first 15 minutes of the podcast, or of the interview that I did with him, is just kind of explaining what brought us to the interview itself. And so you're not missing much. Jumping 15 minutes in. And I also throw up mid-interview. So you guys are in for a doozy. It was a good one. Thank you for tuning in. Again, thank you for supporting us in all of the endeavors. Mine, commonchaos.net, of course. And hey, continue to support I Hate the Scene. Continue to hate I Hate the Scene. Continue to talk shit. Continue to do whatever you want to do. You can find all 125 now episodes of I Hate the Scene podcast at ihatethescene.com. You can also get at us on Twitch. You can get at us on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. Fuck you, Twitter, because that is one of the worst places on the planet. And we're definitely going to be decomposing and rotting in the ground. So while we're doing that, get your kicks in. And because once we're gone, we're gone. But don't take that as that Matt's going to stop creating content, because I highly doubt that. I hope you enjoy the interview. Take care. Your life, like, it wasn't just a fad for you in a lot of ways where it is for a lot of other kids our age at that time. It was something that you just held on to forever, and you continue to be so. And you are a true sports fan. You are a true music fan.
I never got over like a lot of people are like, oh, music was only good back in my day.
Stop. Those are people that don't have fucking taste.
I still like a lot of new stuff, It's just as I get older, I notice there's less and less that I like. And there's just obvious artists and bands and music that is made for a younger crowd that's not meant for me. Like Kid Laroi I can't stand that shit. But I know there's a crowd for it. I know like there's a fan base for that, the happy-go-lucky like high schoolers and shit. Also like NBA YoungBoy, like that's a rap artist that I cannot get into. It's also I think for high school kids, they think he's fucking cool, so that's cool. But there's also like I like mumble rap. I think all of Travis Scott's music's hype as fuck.
You definitely crossover, that's for sure.
I love Future. I think Future's dope. Megan Thee Stallion is fucking fire. I like Dua Lipa a lot.
I'm a huge Dua Lipa fan.
She's amazing. She does a lot of good work. I don't know if she ripped off that song that they allege. There's like 3 copyright suits for the same song.
Yeah. And she's got a couple of her own copyright little suits that she's got. So with that being the case for the pop culture, what motivates you to be so motivated, or what motivates you to be so involved with sports, music, movies, like the pop culture references we're talking about? Is it something that now you can't break because you've been doing it for so long, or do you really gravitate towards these things because of how it makes you feel, and if so, why?
The same way that I watch ESPN and would absorb stats and the news of the day. If you watch ESPN, at least like when I used to do this, their shows would just repeat, and so you would just absorb everything. Kind of the same way with that, I could absorb like music news. A lot of times I'll read a lot about an artist before I ever listen to them. And so I like to have the preconceived notion because I know I'm not going to let what I've heard about them sway my opinion, but it's going to be super interesting when I get the end factor. The fuck are you laughing at?
I just want you to note, and I want everybody else to note, that I'm using my blue pen to cross out questions that I've written down previously. And like third question down on the page for this episode is, why are you the way you are?
Did you answer that?
That was one of the. I go, why are you this way? Was one of the early questions I asked because you were talking about trolling and dissing records, and yes, that's full circle, Matt. That's
I think Virgo.
Yeah, Virgo.
I think my mom was kind of did some shit.
Single parent. Yeah, that definitely has something.
Well, I mean,
or single child. I mean, not single parent.
I'm an only child, and in a lot of ways, she had to be a single parent because my dad was working so much.
The follow up to that too. There was a follow up. There was a follow up to that. There was a follow-up to that said, in terms of behaviors and emotions, which you clearly can't control. So I just want to cross that out as well. Make sure that's something that... Oh, shit. We can add sounds after, please.
Oh, really?
You're not really 13
I don't have
still.
the buttons. So.
You're not really 13 still.
No, Brian. You've seen the way I ruined the Twitter. I am truly 13 and beyond. I was actually considering doing what I would never do on any of my social media accounts and making the profile picture like an avatar of something.
I was going to ask you, do you think that the behavior with what you were mentioning and why you, I don't even know if you really answered it, but why you are so motivated to be involved with music, it obviously does have emotional connections to you. You grew up on it. It was a way for you to...
I like the music and entertainment news and pop culture news way better than the real news. The real news sucks, and it's depressing.
Well, obviously, but you're not just watching these things for news sakes. You're watching these things because you like the music, you like the sports. What about the music and the sports do you like is what I'm trying to get at.
Sports is live history. You're watching history in the making. Everything is recorded stat. So, like, when I watch an F1 race or I'm watching a football game, I don't watch baseball, fuck it, unless the Giants are in the playoffs. You watch a basketball game, and Steph Curry, our boy, he hits a fucking three. You saw his, 3,483rd three or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, it's live history. That's always been amazing to me. It's history in the making because you're not necessarily going to be around for, like, the fall of the fucking Roman Empire or September 11th or something like that to witness history.
Have you always felt that way?
About sports?
About anything. Just the fact that you're taking in this live history, because that is a way to look at things in general. I think that we've been a part of, like, 9/11. Wow, I was there for that. People that were there during Pearl Harbor. Like, that's something that only those people...
You can apply that to, like, going to a concert, I guess, but...
You can apply that throughout history.
That was,
Falls of empires, wars, dramatic events.
I wasn't super into sports as a kid, and it was, like, later on... my dad, like, pushed a lot of sports on me, so I knew about Jordan and Barkley, but I didn't watch games, and I didn't understand the rules to get it all.
But you watched the news and the stats on the games.
Yeah, and I knew that.
Whoa.
I knew that who they were. Like I had a Jordan jersey when I was in like third grade. Like they were larger than life superstars in the 90s. Like we saw Space Jam like opening night. So I knew all those people, but I didn't watch the game. Like when my dad took me to a Suns and Kings game, I went to see the Suns. I want to see Charles Barkley, and they lost. And I was like, fuck the Suns. This is depressing. And I bought a Kings finger, and I became a Kings fan. And from there on out, I just rooted for the NorCal teams. Because I was a child.
Bro, I can't even...
I turned on them.
I feel like...
The music thing's a whole different story.
Listen, I was writing your anthology, right? If I was writing like your life story and every little incident that happened, I don't even know where I would go from there. Because legitimately, as long as we've been friends, and we've been friends for well over a decade, I always took you as like a true fan of things. And relates to sports, right? Now I'm realizing...
My favorite teams I've flipped on. I grew up a Niner fan, and I flipped on them because...
It's so funny.
Jerry Rice left the Niners, and I went to the Raiders with him.
Okay, so we had our entire intro page on iHateTheScene.com, which is the most recent podcast we've done together, is basically about... That's the point to the music side of things, too, and I'm just going to draw the correlation there right now, is that the whole thing with the music as well is that the fickle fan base of the scene era is something that sticks out like a sore thumb amongst music fandom. And really you can point that to any era of music, given 90s shit that we grew up on, right? Same thing. A lot of us aren't listening to recent new metal, although I did listen to the recent Korn. It still holds up. But you know what I'm saying? Like, shit like that. So for the sake of you now addressing that you were a fickle sports fan as well, and it was all for the sake of the history being made, for the sake of the history rather than being the fandom. And now let me paint this picture. I really liked Michael Jordan growing up. I didn't go deep. Of course. I didn't go deep, but I would always watch
every
Bulls
90s
games.
Kid, dude.
But I, because of that, played basketball. Because of that, was on like the 6th and 7th grade basketball team in middle school. I enjoyed basketball, right? Because of Michael Jordan. And like, yeah, I was obviously influenced by it, but I became a fan of like basketball and like played it, right? Same with football. I played flag football all through middle school as well. And like with music, I did the same thing, play guitar, right? Because I was a music fan, and that was like an influential part of me. You kind of did that with music as well, right? And we can probably get to that. But
I still have our songs.
You just have a very unique, because you're huge in record keeping. You're like the note keeper or the librarian of, and dude, look at the backdrop. Look at how you are. You save all your lanyards, your jerseys. You have like, you're a collector of things. The point I'm trying to highlight here is you're really into history for whatever reason, and you have that perspective with sports as like a stat. Like you don't care that they're your favorite players, other than the fact that you enjoy the statistic that it's a live history, like you're calling it. You're not a sports fan like people are sports fans. Like people are diehard sports fans whether they win or lose. You're fickle. You just like that it's a sport that you can categorize, you can like have history to it. You are very Virgo related.
My fandom is still like rooted really young. So like
it's rooted young, but
turning
weird
on the
reasons.
Niners,
the reasons are weird.
Turning on the Niners was watching them go from a Super Bowl winning team and see Steve Young cry every time he got hit and get concussions. We didn't know anything about CTE, and we called them the 40 whiners.
Yep.
And then by the time I dropped out of my mom dropped me out of elementary school. That's another story. My mom cussed out one of my teachers and dropped me out of 6th grade. I went to a charter school.
It's interesting.
That teacher was a Raider fan.
See, and it's interesting that like obviously our parents introduced us to sports and that's what influenced us, right? But you went to the fact that your perspective on the sport rather than being like a fan of the game, learning how to play, evolving, maybe playing it as a child.
I didn't give a fuck about playing it.
You were just about the story.
But I loved NBA Jam.
That's a video game. Yeah, you like video games. You're a huge video game fan. No, I know, but that's what you do. You're also a huge video game fan, which that explains that. Cool, marking that off the list.
Now,
but it's
when I was younger, I did play a little in grade school. You would play with your friends and stuff. Basketball was the only game that you could really play because no one's lining up and playing football.
But you didn't play a high school or middle school sport. You didn't play Little League growing up.
My whole middle school experience is like at home too. That's what like fucked me up socially for years. Was going to a charter school.
For those listening, this may bounce back and forth from like a friendly discussion to like some weird therapy
to an argument
between both of us.
If you turn this into a therapy session, I will pour beer all over these microphones.
Why would we argue?
Because I hate you.
Cameron's got that, I'm sure. Live record. We love this live history thing. I'm really glad you do too because it's forever. But no, I
mean,
do
screenshots.
Okay, we're following a trend here. Screenshots also what got us here. For better.
That's not true. The screenshots were after like we ended.
That's fair. Kind of.
People want to twist my own words, but like, it's my own words. Like I said that.
Okay.
It's just funny.
Are you consider yourself self-aware? These are real questions I wrote down.
I think I'm self-aware. I know when
Why
things are good and stupid and bad.
Why or how do you justify some of your behaviors?
What the fuck does that mean?
Pretty simple, straightforward question. Remember, Matt, I'm a simp. I'm a simp, Matt. Do you remember? Very simple over here. Why or how do you justify your behaviors in the sense that, like, okay, so we're going into you're clearly fickle, and I think that goes across the board. So why do you think that that's a good way to approach your behaviors towards, like, the music world, the sports world? Like, you're clearly a voice. You're very clearly, you can articulate yourself well. You're very well thought out. You're smart. You do know these things. You are like a living encyclopedia in a way of like stats and stuff. And you are clearly drawn to the storytelling of it all. And I think that's where probably the wrestling kicks in. But you are drawn into this, and that's why you're deep on lyrics and meanings behind songs and artists. So you're drawn into like the historical, analytical side of things, right? Yet you choose to just tear what you love apart. You fucking grow this beautiful thing of bushes that you love, and you're just like, oh, it's so great. I know the details, and it took me this. I fucking hate it. And you just go through and you fucking shred it up.
Don't you hate when things you love aren't good?
I mean, but that's life, Matt, and I feel, and see that ties into the Dance Gavin Dance thing. Hey, folks, that's why we're here, really.
So should the previous podcast have been a life podcast because it was a music and entertainment podcast?
No, it was, and it was very driven off of like the analytical part of it. Again, you are good. You were in radio. You painted that history. You were in radio. You are very, and I'm being serious here. And that's what I didn't want it to come out like sounding weird. I really hope you were joking.
Sound weird, and I want it to sound offensive.
See, you do want us to make it sound like we're fighting, and that's what I mean. I don't know.
Who the fuck cares? They're gonna lie about me anyway, so you might as well just fucking yell.
But that's because I want you to also highlight that you are, and this is what I'm going to do. I'm not joking. Like, Matt is very professional. He worked for the radio station in Palm Springs, which was a fucking crazy radio station. Matt got me into shows at like midnight and beyond on the after hours of the Palm Springs radio station. I saw fucking Mike Jones. I fucking saw fucking a shit ton of people.
You could have saw
we got
Red,
into
but
fucking.
They suck.
We got into fucking access at the Key Club for shows. We got into shows around the desert. Matt was literally at the radio station working his ass off, and he wanted to transition into the sports side of things, but he, for whatever reason, was on the music side, and it just worked because
I was on the sports side.
Oh, okay.
And the little bit I did in the FM world, because no one's gonna let me go near a microphone. They didn't take my show seriously or any of that shit. Was like a few times on a West Coast hip hop show that runs only on Fridays for about an hour or two of actual speaking.
Afro Man came and did the cigarette trick.
That was on KCLB.
Right.
Yeah. No. The dude who burnt his lip was Cocaine, the R&B singer with Snoop Dogg.
Yes.
He threw the cigarette up and caught it, the lit end, and it was a joint. And he took a drag from it, and he's like, "You see that shit?" We're like, "Yeah." He goes, "That shit burned like a motherfucker."
Played it off.
Yeah, he played it off like it was cool. He also did cocaine off the soundboard. So he's true to his name.
Palm Springs radio station, ladies and gentlemen. That's how it went down.
Yeah,
so Matt,
92. That whole company got rebranded.
That was right out of high school. I think we both did like a couple of music classes or whatever.
I dropped out of high school for that job.
College.
Because the guy I replaced had just gone to ESPN LA.
You dropped out of college for that job, not high school. You graduated.
What did I say?
You said high school.
I dropped out of preschool for that shit. I couldn't do recess. I told him I don't play no games.
This is not an act either. Like, this is a legit, and I'm sure I prefaced that at the beginning of this episode, but this is literally how Matt is constantly. I love it. I'm glad that we're doing this, dude.
Yeah, this is great.
But I just, so that's I got ash all over me, and I didn't even.
You have me fucked up with this fickle fandom thing.
Yeah, I do. I hope.
It's like my allegiance is to Northern California.
You said it, not me.
Shut the fuck up! I know what I said.
So okay, don't be mad. It's that self-awareness you're so tapped into.
I am self-aware. I'm self-aware that you said that shit. I'm like, wait a minute. When I did that, I was a Kings fan. Here's the thing. You can be a Kings and a Warriors fan because neither one of those teams have ever been... No, you can't. But neither one of those teams has ever been competitive at the same time. You can't say that because you can't be a Yankees and a Mets fan. Get the fuck out of here.
If you're a casual sports fan, you can. If you're just like...
then you don't matter, and you can't ever discuss sports, and you can't ever argue, and you're not allowed to call into sports radio shows. Like, if you're a fan, I like the A's and the Giants.
No.
Well, then shut the fuck up because you just like being in traffic and listening to the radio.
If sports radio or fucking morning radio stations were still popular, Matt would be on them
Brian,
every
you know
single
the
morning.
greatest joke I ever said on sports radio?
Let me hear it,
It was
please.
before they named the Oklahoma City Thunder.
Let's go.
And my co-host, they were talking about
Give
what
me
they
a
should
setting.
name
Give me
it.
a setting. How did you get on the radio in the first place? What is this? What were you doing at the time?
Oh my god. I was going to community college. I had a crush on this girl named Janie. I applied to the radio station like once or twice a year, and they would never call back. And this girl Janie, who like liked me enough, nothing ever happened. She gets
She
me
didn't
this.
give you a BJ at the BK Lounge?
No, check this out. She
Damn.
gets me the interview, and I got the job. I got on Street Team. I was on Street Team for like maybe a year.
Street Team was a
year.
big deal. This is right post shout out
And
to
it's
fucking,
really good money for like
yeah.
for that time. Because I was making like
And
10 an hour and having fun. And
Pound of the
working,
Desert, Pound of the Desert. But this is a shout out to fucking Casey in the Morning who got unfairly terminated from working from the Palm Springs radio in the morning. But he is what
Did
got
he get
people.
shit on from K-Rock?
He is the reason people tuned in to Palm Springs radio and why that was even a popular thing.
It wasn't me.
Largely because of him. I mean, we did have really good sports broadcasting. Obviously,
No,
we were
no,
syndicated. Yeah, we were syndicated.
Dude, it was me and a 68-year-old man.
Anyway, back to the funniest thing you ever said. That is a cat that's also here.
Shut up!
At the studio. Oh yeah, we're gonna have to kill that thing. We're gonna have to kill that cat. Oh no.
The funniest thing I ever said on radio was before they named the Oklahoma City Thunder, and I don't know what the suggested names were, if they even had a contest about it, but my co-host brought it up, and I don't know why he was cool with me saying this on the radio, but he didn't like bat an eyelash at all, and so he said, "What would you name them?" And I said, "Well, what about the Oklahoma City Bombers?" And it was just like an awkward pause. He didn't like transition or set me up for anything. And I was like, fuck, man, you just let me die here. Because it's radio. It's AM radio. Like, they can't hear you. Like, I had no idea anyone was going to hear me when I started that job. I started talking into the microphone, and then the phone rang. And I was like, holy shit. Like I didn't even listen to AM radio until I worked it. And then I was obsessed with AM radio.
It's a very clear, issue that you wouldn't maybe want to repeat, and yet I feel like that's the behaviors you did repeat that got you into what you eventually ended up doing.
I didn't get fired for that.
No, I know you didn't. No, I know.
I said a lot of shit on there.
I know.
It was not that.
I know. It's just weird that you didn't learn from your mistakes, is what I'm saying.
Oh, for the
You
recent shit?
You just lean into it, whatever it is. You just lean into controversy. That's all. That's the whole thing. You're controversial.
Okay, so
You lean into
controversy's fun. I'm not going to lie. It's fun, and I personally don't give a fuck about my personal status. Like, I'd like to make some money at this shit.
Is that safe to say?
No, I do care. I want you to, like, not think I'm some fucking, like, monster or idiot or something like that. Like, I definitely, like...
That's why we're doing this Oprah Winfrey tell-all anyways.
I want you to, Nirvana, come as you are. I want you to, know me, take me as I am.
And if you're
like,
going to come hard.
Yeah, always come hard, right in the face. I'm transparent as shit on this microphone. Since, like, in our last podcast, that was, like, one of the policies is transparency. Like, speak openly, like, don't lie about shit.
Factual. And
we stayed true to that. And I don't think there's a lot of podcasts that will. But I don't come on here and try to be something I'm not. And I'm going to fucking kill that cat live on here and get PETA to fucking get mad at me. And you're going to see how real I am.
I would not be mad at that whatsoever.
Here, hit this. I'm going to hit this cat.
I mean,
I'm going to throw a fucking bottle at it.
I'm going to finish this. And, I do catch up. Oh, man. This is...
It's just my whole life is falling apart, Ryan. I can't fucking...
I was seconds away from saying this is why I don't edit on the podcast, because
it's all over, man.
Downhill.
I knew my life would be shit when I hit the podcast. I'm just sitting here playing video games. Don't do anything, man. I'm fucking... Oh my god.
Not all right. We're having fun, folks. We are.
You said this would be fun.
You ever think you're too much? Actual question I had for
Did you
you.
say 2 months pregnant? What the fuck did you just say?
Do you ever think you're too much?
Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
I knew I was too much on Twitter, and I tried to get away from it, and people shit talk and drag me back in. And Twitter's vile. It's also crazy, too, because as soon as I made Twitter go away, it's not like there were people on Instagram or YouTube or Facebook that were saying mean things about me. It kind of only existed from like a certain group.
That is
it
factual.
made me feel like high
Our
school.
Instagram is
like,
untouched.
Yeah, no, it's pristine. But it also made me feel like that's the group in high school that, like, well, no one likes them anyways. And so, like, that's why they hate everyone else.
The thing with Twitter is...
But am I no better than them? And I should just end the podcast.
So listen, the thing with Twitter, and they're talking about this on a recent Rogan podcast, and just in general, like, Twitter is where people go to only post their, like, opinions, their emotional based... That is the most emotional based app there is in terms of like where people go for that shit. People go to Twitter for the sake of getting involved in controversial conversations, hot takes. They love the fact that what's something that they like or that they share could get retweeted and become viral or get shared in a meme because the sake of saying something witty on Twitter is a meme. What sucks is that people get involved in that on an emotional level, and that's just, I mean, let's call it what it is. It did get to the point on our podcast, I Hate the Scene, that maybe the other behaviors in your life, the ability to like fucking go at people and going good, you're fucking great at it, and the ability to
like to argue,
get away with shit, and the controversy, like you already kind of lean into that, but then Twitter got involved, and it was just fucking...
Twitter's a good platform for all of that shit,
and it's a great platform for like the fucking
toxicity.
Shit. Yeah, the shit.
And the scene can't exist without toxicity.
True.
If you took away every abusive band that,
unfortunately,
that's dropping off the planet for like fucking fans and shit, like there's less and less of them.
Yeah, yeah. And it's unfortunate that like, so I wrote, I mean, God, we can just fucking tie the bow on the scene. We're going to be done talking about that in terms of like...
Yeah, that's a great thing. I don't need to care about these bands anymore.
Let me ask you this. What,
It feels like I'm going to a whole different school.
Fair. That's a fair quote. Like, I mean...
Like, if you want to still be, like, immature and talk about high school shit, it's like, well, mom pulled me out. I'm going to this school now.
I wrote down state of the scene, ? But I didn't want to fucking... I just mean that in general.
What I said?
No, what is the state of the scene in general, the music
That's a name of a different podcast.
I wasn't trying to allude to that. It was supposed to be like an inside thing, but I get it.
Fuck them.
Yes, true to that too. My point my point being is what is the actual state of that music scene that we come from, that the whole I Hate the Scene podcast was based off of. Like, what is that look like? And it sucks that a lot of it does have to do with gross allegations, accusations, and just downright like childish behavior. But we also like to point out that the fan base can be toxic and corrosive. So overall, what do you think is the issue there? And why will it either continue to be an issue, or do you see it changing?
It's young fans. It's
like that's a good...
That music just appeals to young fans, and I want to be able to look at it and say like the scene or that underground that circuit of venues that always has the scene bands or that style of music or that blend of
500
screaming,
and under max.
Yeah, whatever you are, whatever you're playing, you know, that type of shit. That it's always going to be a good jump off platform for rock bands, and I can't honestly say that it is or it has, because rock music in general I think is harder to break through to a mainstream. You kind of just like hit a plateau and then you're just there. And a lot of these bands, It's just young fans. Like even now, the Red Jumpsuit Apparatus is an old band. There's still young fans going, like discovering that or discovering Bayside, and it appeals to younger people. Whereas when I go on tour, it's a completely different genre and it's a more mature crowd, and I get to enjoy things about that. Like if you were to, you know, socialize with anyone, or like, what are you laughing at?
Just leave it. Keep going. Keep going. It's good. No, I like it.
It's all fucking kids. How fun is it when you're at a show and it's all kids listening to a band? It's like, if I thought this band, like if I go see Mood Ring, I think that band's dope as shit.
Yes.
If I go to the show and it's a bunch of kids, I'm going to be like,
bummed out. Yeah.
Like, what am I supposed to do? Like, I kind of wanted to, like, you know, get some content or talk to the band, but, like, I don't want to be a fan talking to the band, and then you're just there in a sea of kids with your arms crossed in the back of the venue.
Wow, you got real deep there. I mean,
it's not fun. It's like, I realized that years ago, dude, but, like, the first time it ever happened, I want to say it was my homeboy Jeffrey's old band, Capture the Crown. I did not give a shit about them. And while they were playing, the whole venue...
Shout out Jeffrey, the homie.
Shout out Jeffrey. Shout out Jeffrey in Australia and all that. and the whole venue's jumping up and down for them, and I'm just standing there like, what?
I'm not into it anymore.
Like, yeah, I just, of all, like, I understand all these bands, I've heard all these songs, but I just didn't give a shit about them. They're playing, and everyone's going crazy, and I'm like, I just don't get it.
Do you think
I'm for sure too old now.
So keep in mind, Matt started what was originally Scene Radio back in 2008, right out of like the college radio station days. And so, what do you think changed ultimately between the? I mean, I know it changed. We grew up, but what about, I guess, the scene in general made you cling to it? Because you didn't really get introduced to it until 2007.
I didn't have my scene phase in high school.
You didn't. Well, you did, but it was like, oh no, you didn't, because we graduated already. 2007 was when you saw.
By the time you bought that Atreyu Greatest Hits and like force fed it to me.
You bought it. I bought the Death Grip one yesterday, and then they did the Greatest Hits.
I thought you bought that.
That's when we got real deep. No, because that was one of the first things you got. You were like, oh, this is like.
Yeah, I liked Atreyu, and I had a T-shirt for Atreyu. It was one of the first shirts I got rid of.
I think you bought the best of and got the T-shirt with it. I think that was the thing. And all they had on there is the bonus song was the stupid song that they did, Bleed It in Black, the stupid song that they did for Underworld. And that was a contract obligation. And you found that out and were like, oh, this is fucking crazy. And we had always kind of been on like, obviously we talk about Boxed and Slums. And you're a fanatic for history.
Dude, it doesn't work anymore.
You're a fanatic of history, so obviously you're into the backdrop of like music in general, so you're always kind of stuck to that side of things. So when you got introduced to the scene and how easy it was to access, like you do go to these small venues and you talk to your fucking favorite bands after the show. And obviously we're in high school, we're going to local shows. A couple of my good friends were, through shows all throughout our high school years. That's what we did. We were able to break away from having to hang out with the family, and we were growing up. And so we were tied to it so deeply. And you're on your phone. And it's fucking great.
I'm trying to get Slums of Box in the work.
Oh,
it doesn't work anymore, dude.
So but that same thing.
I've been on there since AOL.
That same passion of wanting to be tied into the know and have the history, you saw access to that because the scene is very easy to infiltrate.
Any type of hobby or activity, whatever it is that I have, I don't just like casually like something.
Yeah, you go deep.
I usually go like too far. Like remember the Hollywood Undead phase?
Oh, yeah.
That was a pretty gross time. That's why I had that ugly mask and yeah.
But what's funny about that is you're already a diehard music fanatic as it is, and you tend to maybe a couple every so often lean real hard into like a certain band or an artist, but another reason why we might be here, leaning into an artist and then just having your dreams crushed by them and then realizing that they're assholes, but it's okay. But point
don't
being,
meet your idol.
You got the access real early. Like right out of high school, you had a job at the radio station. You knew what it took to get involved and get behind the scenes. You got into it. And then once you got into it, like anything you just said, you go real deep into it. And so there was something about that kept you in for so long, from 2008, 14 years. It's 2022 now. Right? What about it kept you so...
I always thought the scene, or those scene bands, the shit that was coming out of there, I always thought that was like the future, like combining all those genres, and I thought it was cutting edge. And that lasted for about 2 or 3 years.
2007 to 2010?
About 7, 8,
7 to
9.
12. 7 to 12.
About 2009, I realized that not every band was cool. And about 2010, 2011, I realized that all the new bands were fucking whack. And a lot of those bands that were coming out...
24 at that time.
Yeah, and so, like, getting into gent music and all that heavy shit, like, trust me, I got burned out of all of that.
Yeah. And
it's not like I was some, like, metalhead at heart that came up with Metallica.
You weren't. Rap, all the way.
Yeah.
The only reason that I have my in-depth knowledge in hip-hop and rap is because of Matt, and vice versa for the scene in the middle. Is because I took Matt to his first metal show. And Matt introduced me into, like, true hip-hop shit in high school real early on.
You guys quizzed me one time on Velvet Revolver. What 2 bands made Velvet Revolver? And I was like, STP and Guns N' Roses. And I should not have known that. And it was like, I think I blew your mind or Nick's mind or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, old school.
Yeah.
I remember shit like that. Out of all the weed I've smoked, I remember that shit.
I mean, that's true. I mean, those are also. I remember a lot of shit from like the high school days too. I remember a lot of that. I remember fucking writing one of the first real songs I learned on guitar was fucking "Eye of the Tiger," and fucking Nick learned it on bass, and we recorded it in Matt's bedroom on the Acid program, which
Acid 3.0.
We fucking learned how to record, and we had like a CJB.net, did we not? I remember having a CJB.net, and we had put little clips on there. Matt, real early on, was doing the podcast off of Facebook, so instead of having the music tracks up in the top 5, he would have the interviews we did with bands.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So Matt's old school. Matt is old school.
We were definitely like, look, it's no claim to fame. There's no money made off it. There's no clout to be had off it.
It should be.
But I know I was the first Scene podcast. Like, we were, like, Scene Radio predates State of the Scene, Brian Stars, all that shit. Like,
and it should be up there in terms of, like, reasons that the scene got what it got. Like, you were there when you realized that fucking the dudes in Glass Cloud were making bank and fucking buying Lexuses and shit. And, like, you do have several Johnny Craig interviews that not a lot of people got. You know, you do have you've got this stupid fucking Scene TV footage that was during just a weird time for Scene Radio in general. But
drugs,
man. There's a lot of weird, like, just anomalies there that even though, we weren't like some fucking national touring publication that fucking was at every show and every big thing, we were still able to, like, take a niche, whatever you want to say.
It proves that I've been in this specific scene for over 15 years.
And a professional, because you have
for the most part,
you have built things from it.
I'm not going to say doxing people is the most professional
thing
to
do, but
some people...
We all learn.
You know?
We all learn. You come from a background where you know how to fucking be behind a mixer and you know how to do shit, you know. That's what I meant by professional. You do... It's not like you're an idiot.
Oh, and every time I get on a microphone, I want it to be professional. I would never want to come on here
that is true.
And it sound like shit. Like, we already fucked up the video over here, sorry.
Is it working? No?
I mean, now, but you have 32 minutes out of however long we've been talking here, so...
We're good. I anticipated that.
But it's not like we're going to come on here and sound like Demo Team or some shitty podcast that, like, has no good quality. You know, I wouldn't do that. And all the, like, jokes and, like, I knew if I was going to talk shit or say anything controversial that at the very least we had to be professional, because then it's like, well, who the fuck cares? Like, when I went on there and said, like, shit I knew no one else knew and I couldn't prove besides, like, no, the guy told me.
Yeah.
From his
word
mouth.
Of mouth.
Word of mouth from the source.
I was there.
Yeah, and people on the internet are just, oh, yeah, your sources trust me, bro. And it's like, well, it kind of is. It is. And like 124 episodes worth of trust me, bro, because there's no lie told in the podcast.
Yeah.
And like, if we had a shitty podcast.
And a lot of the stories have been fucking not corroborated. That's like, if you're like, no, that did happen. But no, there's been stories that have been fucking validated through third parties, like guests that we've had on. Like,
I wouldn't have been able to walk away from I Hate the Scene if I didn't feel like the 124 episodes that we have on YouTube are quality. Like, even there, we have a playlist that says shit shows. Even our worst episodes are great because we know it's going off the rails and we just let it.
Yeah.
Like, that show was. And me in general, and I think our chemistry in general on a podcast, I think is destined for greatness, because we're not going to be faced with a situation where it's like, we don't know what to say. We're stuck. And I think, I'll tell you, for me, that stems from high school and being bullied and being shit talked and not having that comeback, not being able to be that B-rabbit on the spot and fire back something at them. So now I'm witty as fuck out of defense from that. So
I realized early on, kind of like how you and me became friends, but I realized early on that as long as I could communicate and like be on the same page as someone in something, I got a lot of laughs when it doesn't matter. I told a substitute teacher, it doesn't matter what your name is in like the 7th grade, and a lot of kids laughed, right? And then I can make kids laugh. That would be like the cool thing, and that's kind of how I got through. Really into music, you know, and like there were certain, but I never like was just I was never solely like the music nerd, right? Like, or whatever. I'm not calling people nerds, but you know what I mean. Like, I don't think
nerd is a slur. You can get away with that.
And as you get older, and as you learn like what being cool is, or you learn what like being like hip and trendy, and like as you develop character and you try to not let your parents dress you when you're 15, right? What do? You lean into the things that get you like attention and you're cool. So I learned real early on that if you were knowledgeable in a lot of things or could at least talk about things at a surface level, it went to your advantage. Right. And then honestly, I kind of in the same way in terms of like intrigue. I did play a lot of sports growing up. I loved being active. I still am. In terms of music, I've always loved music or being creative with it in some degree. I still fucking play my guitar. We have a piano at home. Like, still listen to music every day. Like, it's such a huge part of my life. Same with sports. So there was that attachment as well, right? Which is why I was kind of drawn to the comparison with you and how you're drawn to things from like a historical perspective and, you know, the telling of a story.
I definitely like nostalgia.
The thing with wrestling, I get drawn to my emotions with wrestling. I go back to that time in my life and in high school, and you're making friends, and how a lot of my friends revolved around music, wrestling, and fucking sports, and like, or whatever was going on. And you know that you were there. And that's what, for me, it's like, I had to make sure that there was some sort of reason that it maintained such a integral part of my life, right? Where you went with it to the degree, and I was putting the shades on, you went to the degree where it did become your life in like a way. And that's not to say that it's for like a bad thing, right? But it's just, there deserves to be a note of that. There deserves to be recognition of that. And there deserves to be at least some attention put on that, like, you have paid your dues and you've put in a lot of work. And not just for I Hate the Scene and what that was and how long that ran and the professionalism that was behind that, but also how you approached scene radio, how you approached being put in that perspective, how you approach your careers now. You have a couple of them, but one of them is a tour driver. You do drive for bands, and you are in the industry very much so, right? Not to mention the podcast and the content world. And so there's still
full time if my chick leaves me.
There's still a part of it that allows you. Oh, and I have that on here, but also an interim father figure. And so
shut the fuck up.
There still has to be something that, you know, resonates with you being grounded and being like an actual adult, right? And it sucks that you do draw the comparisons of the scene and the age group that's involved with it, and a lot of that does carry over into where we're at now. And like, obviously, you know that the scene is a topic or trendy.
It's a fictional place that only exists in 2007, Brian.
Yeah, that could be true. That could be the point, though, right? Is like, maybe we're still connected there in some weird way, and maybe there's this weird need to like draw the two because we are so, you know, we are so involved in the radio content side of things. We are also are so involved in the music.
I do listen to a lot of podcasts.
And now the podcasting thing, and like, there's certain things that still draw us to this, and it sucks whenever something like this ends. And it's clear that I Hate the Scene and that aspect of you in that world are coming to an end to whatever degrees there are. And that's not to say that there's not going to be anything in the future, but that's also to say that, like, I think you're ready for a change. So with all that being said, how does it feel that you know there's a change happening? And do you see yourself being involved in any way with the scene? And if so, how much? Or have you even thought about all that?
I don't feel more inclined to go see August Burns Red than I did last year.
What if they do a whole 12 Days of Christmas tour again?
I don't care about it. I might go see like Trans-Siberian Orchestra for Christmas. That sounds cool.
That sounds disgusting. But anyways.
I haven't seen them. They have a lot of pyro, and it's not like I'm going to go see Rammstein. Fucking $1,000 tickets.
I mean, you're still in the music industry, right?
But so like what I just said, like about standing in the back of the venue, is like I felt that way for a while. So it's like plus on top of touring, I've got the free show. I've gotten the free show, and I've gotten to see a lot of cool shit. And you eventually just get burned out of it. And so at this point, it would, like I told you, the only show I really wanted to see was that Conway show. Like, I'm tempted to go see that, but I don't feel like going to see some screamy band. You know, and if it was the Undertaking, I want dudes and want to go support them. I want to go and like buy some merch. Yeah, and something like that. You know, there was a lot of the cool thing about the podcast is it kept me in the scene, which was the goal in 2008 when I got fired from radio. That I took this way of getting free CDs from emails that I had and being able to have the radio station name attached to it and say, hey, I need this for buffer music. Like, I got Rise Records, I got Victory, I got Fearless, what was the other
all
one?
The staples. All the staples.
Tragic
Hero.
Yeah, Tragic Hero. I got all these people to like send me physical copies of CDs because I learned that everyone else in the station had this happening. And even though we were a sports radio station, I could say it was buffer music, and they would give me anything I wanted. And it's long changed. No one does this. No one sends out physical copies. Like back in the day, I had like my boss at the time, the guy I told you that wanted to beat up a homeless guy. He had a shelf full of CDs that were all free. Most of them were still wrapped up, and they all had either a mark or a drill through the barcode. Because that's what you would do with promotional copies. If you go through the shoeboxes in that closet, you'll find a bunch of CDs with the holes drilled through them.
Yeah. Or
the razor blade on the side. Yeah. I have a lot of shit like that. Deftones Saturday Night Wrist is like that.
And so it gave you access, obviously, and it gave you this like behind the scene little...
I started going to rap concerts first. The first time I had to get content from an artist was going up to the boot camp clique. Like, before Sean Price died, R.I.P. But,
R.I.P.
Yeah, having to walk up to those guys and not know their fucking names. Like, they're like, synonymous with, I think that's the right word. They're like the opposite. Like, they ran in New York the same time as Wu-Tang. They're another, like, big East Coast rap group at the same era as Wu-Tang Clan. And I didn't listen to any of that growing up. And so I had to get into, like, Helter Skelter and the Cocoa Brothers and, like, listen to Duck Down and all this shit. And it was dope. And I had to ask those guys for content and ask rappers, and that was really nerve-wracking. And then working in radio and having to talk to, like, athletes. Like, the only in-person interview we did was Antonio Cromartie. And I was... Not only are they, like, larger than life, and the dude's coming off, like, an 11-interception season, but he's, like, tall as fuck. He's larger than life. And he, like,
legitimately,
he came off the practice field, number 31. He's like, let me change. He changed into some fly-ass, like, Cartier, fucking, like, what's that pink shit? That pink and yellow, whatever, canary, whatever. He comes out in that, and he's got this big-ass Scarface chain with the glow that says the world is yours. I'm like, oh, my God. I was like, yeah, I'm supposed to throw a football to him, and they're going to take a picture of it. And I can throw a football. I'm a fucking grown man. I could not throw a football to this man. It was not going right. And I'm like, why today? Why? It's like trying to fuck the hottest chick in your school.
It's like trying to get the cat to leave and the fucking...
Yeah, and the shit falls down. No, that's just good content. But it's like just not being able to get a boner, and you're trying to fuck. And I'm like trying to throw this man the football. And so they're like, hey, let me try to throw it. I'm like, yeah, just take this from me. I need to go cry in the van. and afterwards, I told him, well, hey, I'm not supposed to throw it to him anyways. He's a D-back.
That's great. That is a fucking great joke.
Yeah, and that was all I had to live off of for that car ride home.
I mean, but that's an actual...
That was so sketch. That magazine never came out. Think about that. How the fuck did we have that good of access, and that magazine never came out with a single fucking episode or volume?
Because that's also the real side of like the industry.
He had a 7-page interview with Mario Lemieux.
Yeah, well, that's just it, dude. The industry is money, right? And like that's what sucks. How many? Okay, people are gonna look at this.
That casino on the way home, Morongo, and he had to stop there to stick a credit card in to get cash and pay us because he was going through something, and then we had to swear that we wouldn't tell his wife, who I never met.
Oh wow, yeah, that's real too.
Shady.
I mean, I would be involved too. That's journalism.
But that was in between getting fired from radio, trying to stay in the sports industry, and being like, you know what, scene radio is a way better idea than this. And that's how it happened. From those emails I had, and just having the idea of like the podcast and liking, I was like, you took me to that concert, and I was like, how can I keep doing this? Yeah. Because
how can I keep getting the access and getting
at the time? I wasn't making any sort of like good money at all. The radio station was bit after a while and not giving me anything more, and the podcast was fun. I was able to like manage bands for a while, make some money at that. And it kept me going to shows for free. It kept CDs coming in the mail. It kept bands checks coming in the mail.
Yep.
And that was a really fun time. I even got to like rip off unemployment for a while. I had to pay back the state. That was cool. They tracked me down like across the country, dude.
Yeah,
they will always get theirs.
Does not give a fuck. They will always get theirs. That should be a public service announcement for all of you.
Yeah, pay your taxes. Don't fuck around. And if like your parents do your taxes, like do them on your own because they're lying and take your money.
All you OnlyFans workers out there, make sure that you're fucking documenting that.
I'm gonna start a new service called OnlyStans.
OnlyStans, yes.
And it's just gonna be people who stan artists. You can go on there and see their cringy ass tweets, but you gotta pay a premium with your fucking soul.
Do you think you're a narcissist?
No, because I don't know what that is.
Okay. That answers that question.
Asshole. Think you're gonna come on here and Rogan me?
I'm not Roganing you. I'm just trying to fucking give you your little stage, dude. I love it. No, dude. And I want this to also be noted that your history is very real, and it
is real.
Yeah. Okay. You got one? Let me hear it.
I don't have anything.
Let's go. Nothing. No, even though it's right there. It's right there. You said it.
I just thought you said Israel.
Yeah,
word.
I did. Clearly.
Not as triggering as the word Palestine, but
you heard it here first, folks. You heard it here. The Palestine.
You got to be careful of the jokes you tell on the internet because some people will take them out of context and run with them.
You got to be careful about what you say to anybody on the internet in any form, direct messages included.
Do you remember when I had a MySpace? When MySpace was cool, you had a MySpace.
Course,
everyone had a MySpace.
Yeah. I was gonna say like what specific topic?
Oh, probably all like the toxic shit we did on MySpace, all the stuff that you're not supposed to do today, like all that dick pic culture. I think stemmed from MySpace, and I think everyone's guilty of that. Like we would all get canceled if there were screenshots from the MySpace thing.
That's a fact. Yeah, that's true.
So it's just crazy how far.
That's crazy. Come. That's I was talking to a friend of ours the other day, or actually earlier today, and he mentioned that he was like. I got Me Too back in high school. And I was like, no, you didn't. I was like, Me Too didn't exist. And I was like, you got whatever the equivalent of that back in high school was. And it was like just some weird interaction that you'd have with a girl and like in high school.
Got your shit exposed online.
No. It was in high school and like a teacher was like, oh, we heard this. And it was just like a he says, she says kind of thing, right? My point being is he equated it in 2022 to being Me Too in 2005. And I was like, no, you weren't. Me Too wasn't a thing because it wasn't. Me Too wasn't this reactionary thing that people all of a sudden got canceled from like back, in 2005 because society or culture as a whole perceived things differently. And now in this 2022 age of Twitter, it's real quick for everybody to go to screenshot accusation equals reality when that's not necessarily the case, right? I mean, that firsthand. And I think that it's safe to say that with that being the formula that people go to for cancellation, right?
Which we never used.
No, never.
We had a whole episode that was a screenshot conversation with someone, and we never take things out of
as
context.
An example, yes, as an example of how people manipulate and do this on the internet, and that's the thing specifically with Twitter. Twitter is the place people go to get some sort of like pitchfork party going. We're gonna fucking go and we're gonna like virtual rioting. It's really weird, or virtual protesting. It's real weird.
When this started happening, and there was fuck this, whatever. How the main picked up. There was a lot of people talking shit to our account about me, different screenshots that were out there and trying to say shit. And the thing I noticed about a lot of them is like they too are just trying to like be in a group and belong to something. So like it could be a number of things like of why they would come after me because it's ultimately not what's in the screenshots or what's said. It's ultimately I talked about their favorite band or one of the episodes I posted a lot of cringy tweets and I never thought that would impact people the way it would, but I guess being put on blast and shitted on a podcast that I thought no one watched and it didn't matter to because that's what you're told and I only checked so many numbers. You checked analytics recently that were way higher than what I ever looked at, and I only looked at YouTube.
You got stuck in Twitter.
Twitter space. Twitter's not a real place. As soon as I left it, it's like, wow, no one calls me names when I log off of here. So that's crazy.
Yeah, dude, that's something that I didn't think maybe you hear about that a lot actually on Rogan.
I blame myself. I brought like all that I brought all that to the doorstep of the podcast. And I told you and Jordan that I felt really bad if it like tainted your guys' image or look or fun with the podcast, because like it got to a point where I couldn't stop the backlash. I couldn't just not retaliate.
True.
If someone said
Also
some
true.
shit
Also
or
true.
was tweeting,
or defend yourself anyway.
Especially like lying. That's why you told me, you're like, you just have to get off of Twitter.
Yeah.
And I'm like, getting off looks guilty as fuck. It looks like I'm like admitting defeat on a bunch of things.
Not in that setting, because people know how Twitter are, and that's just it. They go after this weird. Oh, well, there's already this accusation. Oh, here's screenshots, but screenshots are out of context. Screenshots in themselves are snippets of how people chose to communicate.
You've known me since
in no way,
junior year of high school.
Real quick. It in no way conveys anything, intent,
and we had a relationship
humor
in PE class.
Okay, anyways. The screenshots don't convey the tone of the text or the conversation through text in general, let alone do text communication in any way, shape, or form convey nuance to a general discussion where, like, me and Matt may be joking, and so I know what Matt means by a certain message he may send me, and I know that that's a joking manner.
I would never tell that Jew joke on the podcast.
Doing that with someone who is maybe not always so close with you, it could come off weird, particularly with us. That's what happened. And for this situation in general, you can't expect anybody in these types of environments to be right and or wrong, because all they're meant to do is to create chaos and like tweets, retweets, likes, shares, all that. That's all that this arguing and this fucking noise that people are making via Twitter is meant to do. And there's no winning in that. And so what I didn't want you to do, and I understood your justification for wanting to defend yourself. You do have the right to do that, and you should. But for your own mental health and for your own well-being, I was like, hey, man, there's no victory. There's no way that it's going to have an end result. You just need to say your piece and get out of there. It's like you're staying in. There's no winner. Nobody's hand's getting raised at the end of this. Just fucking go away. And that was what I was trying to convey with you. So I wasn't trying to just have you go away. I was trying to have you say your piece and defend yourself. And I'm glad you did. And I'm glad you did the way you did it. And I'm glad we did that episode too, because I felt like it was a way for us to, anybody that watches that knows what's going on. Okay. Anybody that's come to us post or pre situation has said, hey, this is fucking ridiculous, and has sided with us. All the people that are can come at you have gotten 6 retweets, and you all need to realize that. And with that being said,
no, some of them have 23 or 26.
Okay. All right. With that being said, those numbers in
they all have
the real world
in their account.
They don't matter, and it's a very weird part.
You told me I said Twitter hates me and they're calling me names. You said, yeah, but it's less than 100 people. Yeah. And it made me think, so when it's 101, do I call you?
When do I start stressing?
What's the threshold?
How
it's
much
122 more? Right now. This bitch is fucking tweeted me, got 30 replies. What do I do?
How much more can I take?
Look, the fact of the matter is, I'm a funny dude.
You are, dude. You
are.
And
I say some awful shit to you, and I've said some awful shit to you since high school.
What does that say? Real Matt being...
I can't read cursive.
Okay. It's not in cursive. Anyways. So, I have 2 quotes. This is an actual quote people have told me in wake of a lot of these situations. And we're probably...
I didn't mean to, man. Nothing matters.
We're probably beyond the...
put this on so you can't see me cry.
Perfect. We're probably on the... putting a bow on it for the I Hate the Scene thing and what's gone on there. But with the... Several people have gone to me and have said, I know what Matt's like behind closed doors. This shouldn't be an issue, and this shouldn't be happening. And what I think people mean by that is that, yes, you are funny. You are outlandish, and that's exactly what was happening from our perspective. People were giving you a natural response to that. And unfortunately, it was a response that was with some just information that was poorly put together, which are the screenshots and them coming at you with stupid shit. And what sucks is any other situation like that, minus the accusations and screenshot formula we're talking about, you would win and you would trump, right? They just did this fake formula that people do on Twitter. And for whatever reason, it painted this weird light with you. But in reality, like, you do go hard. You are very, like, brash, funny, comical. You've already said some outlandish shit on here. And this isn't even 100% Matt, right? Like, I think people expect maybe to lean into that. right? For the sake of content and like a career and a job and a path and like a life, rather than maybe trying to lean into like the historic stuff that you're into with I Hate the Scene stuff. Or maybe that's the comparison that I'm drawing now because you're on the other side of I Hate the Scene and you're done and we're not doing it anymore or whatever. But
you know what it is, Brian?
I do think you need to lean into the real Matt, to the Matt that does like to talk shit and does like to be. But again, you're gonna also have to learn to not concern yourself with Twitter followers and things like that.
Yeah, I only care about numbers on social media when it comes to a brand. I meant to say that earlier. I don't care about Matt Musselwhite having, thousands of followers. I care about whatever my brand is. If I'm selling empanadas, then I want that to be like number one.
The business. That's the business.
Yeah, and whatever it is. If I'm going to go make a mixtape, I'm going to change my Twitter to that, and I want it to be. I want that brand to build up. My personal, I like it better on Facebook and social media when it's more tighter knit. It's people I actually know that I'm joking to, so maybe I could say something that's not going to get taken out of context. But it's also popping up. People you may know are actually people. Like my Facebook used to be accurate, and it's long gone. It hasn't been like that from going overboard, trying to spread this brand and adding random people and then sending them an invite on Facebook, which is annoying. People hate that. But I've been in the scene for 15 fucking years, and I for sure have a reputation. And if you ask anyone, like, the meanest thing that someone's going to say about me is that, like, I'm an asshole or a dick or I said something. Like, there's nothing that I've done to harm anyone that someone's going to have accounts of or complain about. Like, I've just existed over here trying to do my own thing in one way or another, whether it's an interview or when I used to be in a band or when I tried to get, fucking MySpace records to pay attention to my rap songs, whatever it is.
Right.
Like, that's my game on social media. The attention seeking's all for that shit. The scene in general has this toxicity to it. And I've been here, I've seen it. When I went through the Hollywood Undead phase, the whole thing with their singer that got kicked out after he signed that mask and everything. His whole thing was like, he liked 17-year-olds. And like my introduction to the word scene kid was kind of through them. And the word like scene kick referring to your sidekick and realizing, oh, this is a whole subculture. These people are cool as fuck. LA is cool as fuck. Hollywood's cool as fuck. But really, all that shit is toxic as fuck. And that's what sucked me in. But that dude specifically, he always used to like have a thing for 17-year-olds.
I'm going to hold you. Pause that. I'm going to be sick.
What?
Yeah.
Really?
Yep.
Oh, sorry. Did we just end on me saying the word 17-year-old?
No.
How are you going to edit this? Oh, that's not a good beer.